So, like I told folks last night when I spoke, that I didn't really choose this profession. It kind of chose me. And if I would have had it my way, I would have been a stand-up comedian. So I tell bad jokes all over the country because that's really what I wanted to do. I really wanted to be a stand-up comedian. My name is Cheri Honkala, and has anybody in here ever heard about the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign? Okay, you all get A's, psych. I'm a formerly homeless mother, and I have 2 children. My life is very surreal. Again, my name is Cheri Honkala. You can Google me while you're sitting there. And I live a very surreal kind of life. I live in, like you guys do, one of the richest places out in the entire world. And I consider myself to be fairly educated and smart and resourceful. And yet I found myself living in a car with my 9-year-old son, driving around trying to figure out where I was going to sleep on any given night. Unable to get myself into a homeless shelter in the Twin Cities. Then I began taking over abandoned government properties owned by Housing and Urban Development in order to keep myself and my 9-year-old son from freezing to death in the winter time. How many people are going into social work here? Okay. I'll begin to pray for you. No, just because all of you are going into a profession where you're going to have lots of expectations on you to help people access city services in a time in history when those city services don't exist. So you guys are all going to be either very creative people, or you're going to have, you're going to have a lot of struggles to have to figure out and have to deal with, right? Not to mention probably starting with trying to figure out how to pay your own student loans, right? So after taking over abandoned house, living in the abandoned house with my 9-year-old at the time, then I learned that I was going to freeze to death even in that abandoned house. In all of the houses in the wintertime in the north, they keep the heat on because they think it's important that the pipes don't freeze. Yet there's no place for human beings and children. It's okay to let a kid be outside and freeze to death, or the homeless that are at Sanctuary Village to sit outside, or the 29 people that died in Duluth in the wintertime. But we keep the heat on in abandoned properties, and then we pay people to monitor and make sure that those abandoned properties stay vacant in the wintertime. Anybody think that's strange? Yeah. It's okay to go raise your hand or something. I know you're all eating popcorn or something simultaneously. No, just kidding. So yes, I think it's, what would they say? Dysfunctional? Yeah. I mean, the country has a mental health problem. So anyway, I learned immediately that back in the day, I know most of you in here don't remember this, but they used to have a thing called a payphone. And my older son, I would give him a bunch of quarters, 9 years old, and he would go down to the payphone and he would call one of my friends and say, my mom's on her way again to jail today because they just tried to kick us out of this abandoned house. And I was learning that thing is called organization. And then people would get a little flash on there. This was before your time. Beeper. Or pager. And it would be like the little 911 thing, right? These are things, back in the dinosaur age, if you look them up. Phone booth, pager. And then immediately, one of the friends would come, zooming over to the house, deal with my older son, Mark, and then I would get released out of jail and come right back over and move back into the house again. Soon I learned that what I was beginning to be a part of creating was something that was called organization. And I learned one of the most crucial things in the world was the importance of organization, and that you can't really do anything or get anything done without other people. And so I didn't realize that, but we were turning into organization, we were beginning to draft a plan, and soon more and more homeless families began to say, it's cold out here, we need someplace else to live, can we figure out how we can link together? Back then I was like, okay, I'm going to get a place to live, and then I'm going to get out of this whole poverty stuff. Well, zoom ahead in the age of cell phones. And I've been doing this stuff for, 20 some years now. Teaching families across the entire country how to move into abandoned heated homes, setting up homeless encampments, how to build leadership amongst the ranks of the poor. Social workers would continue to meet me by day and say, Cheri, I didn't go into social work because I wanted to split families apart from each other. I just want to drop in your ear that unless I can find some place for this family to live, they're in the park over there, I have to remove the kids from the household. And so, I found myself helping to build what's called the modern day Underground Railroad, right? Figuring out various different ways in order to keep families together and keep them alive while we build this massive movement that we need to build in this country. So I don't, did you know there's no money in organizing? Yeah, it's like negative zeros in organizing, but I highly recommend it. I sleep good at night. I get up in the morning. When the organization has a couple dollars, I get a couple dollars. When it doesn't, I don't have any money. I have two sons now. My younger son is Guillermo, and he's 12 years old, and it's very normal for him to wake up, and there's a bunch of different people that are currently in the house. No problem, have a seat. And he just begins to start having conversations with them, and they look at him like, who is this little weird boy that's just, on the spot having conversations with me over cereal or breakfast in the morning. But all of you that are going into social work are definitely going to, the only way I think that you're going to make it and be sane in this process is if you have one foot in your day job and another foot in a movement to fight for economic, social, and cultural rights. That's going to be the only way that you're going to be able to stay sane in this process is to help build the social kind of movement that says that people should have all of these various different basic necessities of life. Because certainly when I was growing up, it was during a period of history when they didn't have battered women's shelters. So instead of them saying, let's figure out a place for your mom to live, and let's deal with the fact that she's never worked outside the house and help her figure out how to manage a checkbook, they separated myself from all my brother and my sisters, and I spent most of my childhood running from one institution to another and foster care, trying to figure out how to unite my family. And so I swore when I got older I was going to make sure that this never happened to me, that I was never poor or anything like that, so that my children could be in jeopardy of being taken away. And now I've seen across the entire country this whole effort to fast-track children into foster care and into adoption, particularly children of color in this country, only because their parents cannot afford don't have access to living wage jobs, can't pay their mortgages, they're having their water bills shut off, there's a lack of food, all of these kinds of things. So that's why I will continue to encourage you to have a foot in both this movement, and also you can try to do the best that you can in terms of trying to secure whatever kind of services that you need to try and secure for the families that you're working with. These are photographs here of various different actions. So whether they're here in Philadelphia, people their criticism is they like to say, we got a lot of seats for you right over here. They like to say, Cheri, the reason why these families are in housing is because you fail to utilize city services. So if any of you get an opportunity to come and this is a plug, we do alternative spring breaks. And one of my favorite things to do with people that are going into social work is say, hi, this is Jill and this is her family. You get her into emergency housing in Philadelphia. And then it's the most tragic experience because a lot of the young students that come into my office, they're like, I got this. I got the negotiation skills, I can work the maze, I can make this thing happen. And then, 24 hours later, they're like crying, like, I can't believe this is happening. She's passing them out. Okay, good. So the thing is, whether it's, like Billy here, so when we get large numbers of folks, I'll just take everybody, all the moms and all the kids, and we'll set up right outside the homeless shelter and be like, okay, so you say you have services. We're all right here. And then we'll be outside, and then they'll send somebody from the city that says, oh, Cheri, why are you doing this? You're putting women and children in danger of being taken by social services. So what am I supposed to do at that point? Somebody let me know. Come on, what would you do? We're playing out, what would you do? Huh?
I would let them take, they're going to get housing, aren't they?
What?
They're going to get services?
What, the children?
Yes.
You would let them be taken from their moms?
No, I mean, will they have a place to
No.
stay and a roof over their house?
No, they'll take the kids from off the moms.
Because I know housing is really bad in Philadelphia, because I have a friend even suffering from AIDS, mental illness, and she ended up out in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really literally no break.
Mm-hmm. So I'm asking, what would you guys do? Huh? I like your attitude. What is your name? Because I think when you ask that question, you have to pretend like you're the mom.
Yeah, I have kids, so I know that's what I would.
Excuse me? Like, you're going to take the child? Because I think when you guys go into social work, aren't you guys supposed to follow your code of ethics? Mm-hmm. Do you think separating kids from their mom when they're good moms is a good thing to do? No. Well, then you better live up to your code of ethics and say something about it. So I'm just telling you this because that's how insane it's gotten to this point. The city would send, instead of like shambling, like in Philadelphia. Do you really believe in any part of the country that, or here in Rochester, like with Sanctuary Village, do you think that there is absolutely no place for those people to go? Huh? There are places. So why are they outside? Or like Billy or any of these kids in Philly or their families. So even our recent action that we did, the mayor said, I would really like to be able to help the families that are outside right now, but there's just no place for them to go. Last time I looked, right, there was lots of buildings here in Rochester, lots of churches. Do you think if you're a mayor, you got some power to make things happen? So we've got to begin to treat that stuff like it really is. That's insane. That is not the right response, is to say that there's just no place for these folks to go, and that it's okay for people to freeze to death, particularly children in the wintertime, and die. So I think we have a responsibility to not only follow your code of ethics, but to speak up and say something about it. Don't get fired, because we need you to stay in your jobs. But I think that we also need to be raising these issues, that this is unacceptable and this shouldn't be done. A recent situation I also had this year was that a family was together, and they decided to take a foster kid into their house, and they didn't know it, but the child was a fire starter. And the child set the house on fire, and they became homeless in Philadelphia. So immediately, what they do in every city across the country, they put the kids and the family into the Red Cross for 3 days, and then they say good luck. My opinion about why they put a family into the Red Cross for 3 days is because during those first 3 days, you're fighting mad. Like, somebody help us, somebody do something, and after the third day, you're like depressed. It just hit you that you've lost everything that you have in your life, and it's immobilizing. And so this family came to me, and I said, are you serious? You are taking the responsibility of taking care of this foster child who burned down your house, and there's nothing the city can do? So, well, of course, we went down to the Department of Human Services, Child Protection, and I went down there, of course, with my 75 other social work friends after hours, and we sat in there, and we let them know that we wanted to file a police report against the city for neglect and child endangerment for leaving a child that the county was supposed to be responsible for housing. And guess what? Well, of course, they got housing. But do you think that that would have happened if we hadn't done that? So these are important things that we're just learning over time, and that is incredibly important if we're serious about doing what's best for various different families. So one of the things that's coming up is I was doing a plug for the alternative spring break. So we do lots of exciting, interesting things that you as social workers are going to want in your toolbox when you go into the field of social work. So if you get an opportunity, you should definitely come. I know some of your professors here. They might even work with you. And you can add these various different tools to your toolbox as you go into social work. But the other thing is this summer, June 25th through the 28th, we're hosting what's called the United States Social Forum. Has anybody ever heard of the U.S. Social Forum? You should Google it. What it is it's people that are coming together from all over the world and all over the country to talk about the problems that we're facing, and we're going to develop a roadmap on how we're going to deal with those things and how the heck we're going to get out of the situation that we're facing as a country. And students are going to be absolutely instrumental and important to that process. So there will be social workers from around the country. There'll be poor folks, homeless families, ex-offenders, foster parents from both urban and rural areas, trying to figure out how we're going to get ourselves out of the crisis that we're in right now in this country. So I hope that many of you will think about it, add it to your summer plans, add the alternative spring break to your plans. There's also lots of resources on our website at Economic Human Rights. And I would encourage you that I know that there's a local chapter of the Social Worker Action Alliance. Social welfare. Why do I keep doing that? It's that welfare thing. That I want to encourage folks here to become members and link up with the other freedom fighters that are here in town. Because in social work, you guys are going to be pushed into a situation where you're either going to be a part of playing the soft cop role and be about social control, or you can be the freedom fighters that are about really assisting and helping to build the leadership of the ranks of poor and homeless families across this country. So I'm going to shut up now, and I hope I've sparked a lot of questions and comments and conversation. Thank you. And I'll feel so offended if you don't have questions or comments. So this is another tent city of ours. That's in Africa. Psych. It's in North Philly. How come you guys don't see this stuff on CNN? Because it doesn't matter, right? Okay, yes?
How long by law you have to be living in a place before it's considered, before you're legally allowed to stay there?
That's all of that depends on how much social capital you have, how big your troops are, and a lot of other kinds of things. Yes, we do classes and trainings on how to reclaim vacant properties. And at the end of the day, it's really about who wins the moral fight in the media. Like right now, when I go back home tomorrow, I'm dealing with Vera, which everybody should, go on my Facebook and show some love and support for Vera. She has MS and she's blind, and the Sheriff's Department is coming to remove her from her home tomorrow, in which she's lived in her whole life. And so there'll just be, like in Philadelphia, like many other places across the country, there's more abandoned houses than there are homeless people. Yeah. So the answer to that question is, so what are you going to do about that situation, Cheri? Well, I know a bunch of social work students that are at a campus right down the street. They're going to have a different class tomorrow, trying to keep Vera in her home. But that's basically how it works at the end of the day.
But I just meant that because I thought there was some kind of
Squatters' rights?
Yes.
That's like people that are arrested having Miranda rights. All of these things are in the movies. It's a different time right now in history, where there's a whole different militarization of the police department and a real fight for society right now where multinational corporations are determining the direction of the entire country as opposed to people and human needs.
And actually, just let me, on Monday, here in Rochester, Take Back the Land Rochester is going to be doing a similar one of those actions on Monday. There's a gentleman who's having his house foreclosed on, and they've been fighting with the
By Wells Fargo.
for a couple of months now, and they're going to have a similar action where folks are going to gather in front of his front lawn and keep him in his house. And that's Monday before Thanksgiving again, same situation. It's his home. He's put lots of money into it. All that kind of stuff.
There's chairs. I don't bite if you're nice. Yes. I lived for 9 months. And then I did that thing that you never are supposed to do as a strong, articulate woman in America. In order for me to get out of homelessness, I got married. I'm just being honest. It didn't work very long. Marrying for housing, don't recommend it, young women out here. Especially because we got nothing but unemployed people out there. You're going to have an unemployed husband. Yes?
It's like a two-part question. I mean, was there a certain way you cope with it? Like a coping mechanism that you might have used?
Yes. Yes. I was very into, I read a lot of Mère de la Soeur, and I argued in women's studies classes because I was going to college and because I wanted to know that there was a history of other poor people resisting their conditions. And so I just, I learned a lot about different people's cultures in women's studies classes and all that kind of stuff. But we didn't really talk about working class economic issues. And so that really pissed me off. So I began to study, in particular, African American women during slavery and struggles of resistance. Like, how did they keep families together on the plantation? And how did they deal with questions of morale? So I did a lot of reading on like slave narratives and stuff like that. So that was one thing. A lot of reading, a lot of debating, a lot of crying out loud, and I did a lot of writing and read a lot of Mère de la Soeur. She wrote about women and their very unique experiences during the Great Depression. And so she would get women together and they would go into abandoned houses and they would, write about their experiences. Because, a lot of women during slavery, they ended up laying down with their slave masters and doing whatever they possibly could in order to feed, clothe, and house and keep their families together on those plantations. And so, a lot of folks like to talk about a lot of ideas and how they'd like to have an ideal world. And then there's the real concrete thing, like how do you live to the next day? And so the moral of all that story is then, being broke, I had a 9-year-old, so I'd get this paper and I'd put it up on the wall, and so my 9-year-old son, Mark, I'd write plays and come up with characters and stuff like that, because, we were constantly dealing with the police. They were a lot of character. They had a lot of character. That was a joke. Okay, so we had a lot of characters in our life, right? So we would be creating these scripts and these plays and all that kind of stuff. And so then I decided to write like 25 plays. And because I didn't have money for childcare, I would always have Mark, my older son, carrying a bucket across the stage or whatever, so he had to sit and be quiet through the whole thing, waiting for his one line, carrying the bucket across stage. But the moral of the story is, get your cell phone out now, if you Google my son, actor Mark Webber, he's a real famous actor. You ever see Drive Me Crazy, Snow Days? You think I'm kidding. I'm not. And he married Teresa Palmer. You know Teresa Palmer? Warm Bodies. Yeah, so, you'll never know it, but I created a movie star. So, yeah, those were my coping mechanisms.
Is there a common reason for why people find themselves to become homeless? Or
Yes.
what is that?
You obviously have an accent and come from probably a more humane country. Well, all I know is I've traveled all over the world. And like when I was in Finland or Sweden or whatever, like I would even talk to like the taxi driver, and they had like health care and wages, and women had maternity leave, and they had a right to education, didn't have student debts. And yeah, in this country, I would say the number one thing, which is just as important as the discovery of fire, right? And how fire changed society, electronics and technology. And I'm gonna be dead and gone, but you guys are gonna have to figure it out. Because if, back in the day, when the dinosaurs were around, we used to have to pick up the phone and call, what was that on the other side of the phone? An operator. You must have watched the same movie. And where are those operators now? They all had jobs. And when you go into the store, right, and you could check out your own stuff, what was that job used to be called back in the day? A cashier, okay? And when you had a car, right, the people that put the tires on, put the cars together, they worked in General Motors. You know how many human beings put cars together now in General Motors? And why Detroit is in bankruptcy? Because robots put together cars now in the United States of America. You can go online, I'm not making this up. It's the Jetson period. Oh, you guys don't know what the Jetsons cartoon is. Google it. There we go. So my question is this, right? During slavery, right, people lived in inhumane conditions, right? But they needed people during slavery to work the fields. So they kept them in houses, right? My question is, as a society, if the corporations no longer need us to produce their wealth, why should they provide free education? Why should they house you? Why should they do anything? And why is it that in this country than any place else in the world that we have more people in prison, and we spend more in Pennsylvania on a prison budget than education? Those are all those answers. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about what you were telling us was happening in Philly about education? Because the one thing that I know, knowing you over the years, right, and I met Cheri doing a macro project for Methods 3 many years ago.
She was 10 back in the day.
Just precocious. But what I learned, though, is that what I learned something really scary is happening to education in Philly right now.
So what's happening in Philly is they're trying to close 100 schools. So far, they've closed 40. And now on television, every 10 seconds, you'll see a commercial about the hassles of school, and that it's best just to have your kids go to school online. So from kindergarten to 12th grade, well, I mean, a teacher takes vacation, gets a salary, costs money in the classroom, the buildings cost money, and teachers get attitudes and join unions. So just eliminate a right to education. And then the people that can afford the internet and the computers, and if they're good at just a third grade or second grader or a kindergartner is good at just sitting there with a laptop, then they can get the education. And if you can't, then you're in trouble. So, needless to say, you think the teachers in Philly were a little pissed off. You think the parents? Yes. So we had this massive demonstration, and the efforts to privatize and make education go online, the big corporations with the money, they're trying to do this across our entire country, paid to have major public relations firms come into Philadelphia and organize a counter demonstration, offering unemployed folks anywhere from $50 to $150 to participate in the counter demonstration. And the counter demonstration was about those greedy teachers, unwilling to give up their health care benefits. So, yeah, it's a different time right now in history, and it's kind of like, you know, I'm really sorry, guys, but you're born during this time, and this is a situation where you're not going to be able to, like, sit this one out. And students always say to me, well, Cheri, you don't understand. I'm tired. I got kids. I got student loans. I got so much homework. And I just want to remind you that don't you think during the civil rights movement, people were scared, were in debt, worked 2-3 different jobs, and yet, as young people, were the ones that stepped up and played important roles in history, were the ones that filled the paddy wagons, walked out of classes, and took their historical role in history. And I'm encouraging all of you that are going into an incredible humanity area of work, like social work, to play that role as well. Other questions? Yeah. Well, wait. Her next, because you just had one. No.
How will these kids stay home and use computers? Don't their parents have to go to work?
It doesn't matter. Huh?
It's not a feasible plan. No. I know they're promoting it like it's a great
Right,
plan, like,
right.
Look at how terrible schools are, but I mean, most families have both parents working.
Well, you know, I wish I could just limit this problem to the U.S., but it's a part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Plan. If you look up the TPP, they're taking this lovely plan international. The corporations are. So, yeah, there's no, if you're trying to find the logic, there is no logic.
And nowadays, even they're moving that way regarding snow days. There's no such thing anymore as snow days. So kids will have class on those snow days.
They're going to be latchkey kids left alone. would shut off internet in the house.
Well, then what it does is it promotes families leaving kids home alone.
Right.
And then promotes child abuse.
Right.
Which then keeps them taken away.
I mean, public school is the biggest babysitter. Yes, back there and then you.
My question was, I mean, as you were living homeless, you said you were arrested
Mm-hmm.
a few times. I mean, did that impact you today because of a record? I mean, I don't know what they would charge someone
Mm-hmm.
for doing each time. So
I ran for vice president, but I probably can't get a job at the day labor. Yeah, I totally know what ex-felons are dealing with all the time. So is that surreal? Like, I ran for vice president of this country, and 85% of the country was able to vote for me. But if I went down to the day labor, they would say, because of my over 200 some arrests, that I didn't qualify for employment.
it's sad because it was like out of your control to
Right.
be homeless. You get, you know, it's just like a, you know, recycling. You can't help it.
Right. Well, I definitely know what ex-offenders are dealing with on a daily basis. It is the most crazy thing in the world. So I'm dealing with so many unemployed fathers who would love to contribute to their children's well-being, who get called deadbeat dads, where the real issue is not deadbeat dads, they're unemployed fathers. Because of, you know, something they did when they were 16 or 17 years old, and now they're 30 years old and they still can't find employment. But this is all going to change, because, you know, when the situation gets really bad, I've been traveling all over this country. You guys are waiting for the Mike Brown verdict, right? People aren't going to just stand by anymore and let folks like kill our children, deny people, you know, let them freeze to death in Rochester. It's too much now. So with that comes change. It's not going to be easy, but it's definitely going to change.